Good morning and welcome to WNHH-FM's Dateline, New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. And happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Jayuan Carter makes our community tick at the grassroots in the tradition of the late, great civil rights leader whose birthday we celebrate today. Jayuan is in the WNHH studio today to tell us about that. Welcome to WNHH and thanks for stopping by.
Welcome, Paul Bass, and I want to say good morning and happy Martin Luther King Observance Day.
All right, and thanks also to New Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program. So we got a bunch to talk about, Jayuan. You're a young small business owner. You're a contractor. You've also been very involved in public life at the grassroots activism in politics and community issues. You have thoughts about cooperative economics and how this all fits into the dream of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So would you mind starting telling us about your business, Cork Eco-Friendly Landscaping? When did you start it and what exactly is it?
I started my landscaping business 4 years ago, and the reason I started that is because I wanted to have some impact in our community in regards to hiring and being able to display our talents and services in New Haven. I grew up in New Haven, and there's this type of quota that's out there that New Haven has this issue where it doesn't seem as though we're good enough. And I feel that we are, and we have to display our talents by showing it through the things that we can control.
So you started a business in landscaping. Had you done landscaping before? Did you work for other people? Did you mow lawns as a teenager? What was the deal?
So yes, I actually mowed lawns in my neighborhood during high school days. I had a single mother. My mother, she was a single mother. But then she eventually got married, and when she purchased her one family, somebody had to do the grass, and it was me. However, what I didn't know was that it was an actual market, that you had the ability to take care of neighbors' yards, and one thing led to another where I had the ability to have a few folks on my neighborhood street in my
So did
neighborhood.
someone show you how to do it?
It started off with my stepdad, who actually showed me the process of mowing and cutting grass.
Mm-hmm. And where was this, in Fairhaven?
This is actually in the Dixwell area on Ashman Street.
Okay, so you were on Ashton Street mowing your family's lawn, then some neighbors paid you to mow lawns, and you were on your way.
Exactly.
How old were you?
I had to be 14, 15.
Okay, so then did you continue in that? Because you started this business at 27. What happened in between?
So in between, actually, I had a job at Yale University, but also I felt as though I needed more income. Being active in the community, you begin to hear the issues. And one of those main issues was there's not enough contractors, there's not enough job opportunity, and I had the ability to save some money, and I figured as though I could give it a try of starting some type of enterprise to see it grow and to actually have some type of impact.
Did you get help with that with the city? You know, Tony Harp, the mayor, had a program to help people start small businesses.
So I was able to go to a couple of classes from the Small Business Academy.
Yep, with Jackie James there on Dixwell Ave.
Yeah. However, during that time, I was not one of the people selected to get grant money or some type of loan. You had to make it quick on that list. And I, at the time, wasn't able to do that because I was actually already running the company. And by the time I got word that there was funding, so as I put my application, I was going
from the academy.
It was actually courses that talked about business structure. I had the ability to already know some of that information, but I still went just to see if there was something else that.
Like, did you start a limited liability corporation, or what kind of business you set up?
So I actually structured it as a social benefit company. It's actual what you'll call a Schedule C.
Does that mean that you don't have to make as much profit to shareholders, or?
Pretty much, yeah. You can focus on an impact on the environment.
Mm-hmm. So do you have shareholders, or like what was the reason?
No, it's structured just me as a one-man show.
Mm-hmm.
But I just looked at it as the corporate structure benefit.
So you started up a company to do landscaping. You left your job at Yale. What were you doing at Yale?
I was a lab assistant in the dermatology department.
Oh, yeah? How was that?
It was great. It was good experience to know that there's actually other work in the market that is not taught in school. I came about this job because there was a short hiring opportunity, and my mom had already been in the department for about 20 years. Mm-hmm. And she just gave me a call and said, hey, expect a phone call from my boss soon. And
very nice.
I hope you do well in your interview.
Stephen Maurice Williams, thanks for listening. Stephen says, God bless, bro. I miss your glasses. LOL. So Jayuan Carter, you were working at Yale. You had a decent job, but you said, let me do something where I can create jobs in the community. You'd done landscaping in your neighborhood growing up. You decided, okay, I'll go into business doing this. So it's just yourself at first, right? How did you get the money? You saved us some money. Did you hire people? How did you get the clients? How did Eco-Friendly start?
All right, so I started off with myself and a few of my friends. They as well were looking for work. They had some issues on their record, which was preventing them from getting a job.
Yeah, that's the big issue now. Ex-offenders 25 a week come into our community and they need work.
Agree.
And have a hard time getting hired.
Agree.
You said, I know that you knew these guys. So you said, like, I can hire them. I know they're not going to
Let's give it a
mess
try.
me up. Yeah. So what did you do? Did people hire you to do their lawns or what?
Yeah, so pretty much I used some of my my network that I was able to develop through community activism. Some folks that I've knew through family and friends, and I just reached out on my own and knocked on doors. I also just had an ability to speak with people to get them to point me in the right direction of property managers to be able to put a bid in successfully.
Oh, so it's not just you go, hey, I'll do your lawn and cut your hedges, but you actually get people who have a lot of property hire you to go to the different properties.
Yeah, you want to have a mix.
Because there's some companies that own a lot of property in the city.
Agree.
So who's picked you up?
So my first year, I actually was able to work with Juan Celeste on some of his properties.
Yeah? Are you still working with him?
No longer, because his portfolio, the direction has changed.
Oh, he used to have more multifamily apartments?
Yes.
What did he switch to?
It seems as though he's going in a different direction. I know that he has a lot of investment on the Long Wharf Hotel.
That's true, and he also has the downtown building in Orange.
Yeah.
So he gave you your first big break?
I would say yes. I have to accredit him with that.
And he sent you what are they called, New Haven Properties, or what was it?
NHR.
Yeah, NHR Properties, right? So you got to do what, like 20 properties, or?
Yeah, I was able to get up to 35 with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh wow! And so then, how have you branched out since then?
I had the ability to go and put bids in with property management companies. I joined a business cohort called the BNI, where businesses come together and we support each other through laws of reciprocity.
Gotcha. So like you'll do the landscaping and somebody else does what? Repairs?
There's different services that are provided, and we use each other's networks to tap into each other.
I get the concept. So then you go to the property manager, say we're a bunch of companies together. You just hire us in one fell swoop.
If we could set it up like that, we would definitely go for it just like that.
So who are some of the cohort? Do they do building cleaning? Do they do
yeah, we have movers. We have
movers. Right.
We have lawyers on different sides of different services. So some are going to do injury. Some are going to focus on divorce, family.
But how does that tie into property management?
So they have friends. They may have relationships with families or people in executive decision making power who would never have met me, only by that introduction. Mm-hmm. So, and in return for me, they may have not known the people that I may know. And because I know that they're looking for this particular service, just one phone call, I'm able to set something up and it becomes an alley-oop situation.
So Cork is the name of it? Cork Eco-Friendly Landscaping Company?
No, it's called Executive Eco-Friendly. It's called Executive Ecoscaping.
Oh, where did I get the Cork part?
I guess it's because it's quirky in a sense where I focus more so on lithium ion batteries to actually produce the energy for my equipment versus the traditional gas. And I do have the line of services to do both.
So that powers your mowers?
I have mowers. I have pretty much a whole line of equipment to take care of residential properties.
What kind of other equipment?
You hedge trimmers. You have leaf blowers. You have weed whackers. You also have the ability to get a chainsaw with that. So
one thing you offer people is, hey, not only will we take care of your property, but we're going to be better for the environment because we're using lithium batteries to power our mowers, our hedge trimmers, our leaf blowers, weed whackers, and chainsaws.
Agree.
Very interesting. So where are you now with this, Jayuan? How many employees, how much work, how many dollars a year you bring in?
So as of right now, I'm still growing. I'm still getting some of the structural pieces on the ground. And as of right now, it's 4 of us who works on this company together. Last year was a great year, being that I did join that chapter. It was able to bring in a different sources of revenue and also expanded my services into different parts of the county.
What kind of services?
So I was able to get into some of the homes that actually had more disposable income to provide the chance to pay for upline services, where people who were more focused on a good looking yard versus I just need you to cut my yard and I'll call you in 2 more weeks, 3 more weeks probably.
So you got wealthier clients in suburbs?
Pretty much in this particular case.
And they pay you not just to cut the grass, but to make the yard look fancy.
To do a little more. Agree.
Is that what it is, like design?
I'm able to provide that service as well, but it was more so that they don't want to spend their hours inside or outside of the house cleaning up. they rather focus their time on other things and to allow someone like myself to be able to provide what they're looking for.
And so, and Bob McCormick says, how many people do you employ? You employ 3 plus you.
Yes.
All right. So that's great. Your business is getting going, and you got extra concept to it about being green. What led you, Jayuan, to want your company to deal with the climate issue?
Well, I looked at New Haven as a liberal city, and we had one of the leading institutions, Yale University, in our backyard. And I noticed that they have a lot of land that they have to take care of. And after doing some research, being a community activist, learning that pollution is a very is high in the city itself. At one point in 2012, there was a survey done, and New Haven was actually one of the 12 dangerous cities to live in with asthma because of the pollution. Bridgeport was on that list, so it's Hartford, and I figured, that could be part of my solution or part of my niche to stand out between my competition, because there's 1,000 companies who do things on the books and off the books.
All right. So that's a great way to compete. And we're talking to Jayuan Carter. He's a small businessman making it happen in New Haven with his eco-friendly executive ecoscaping company.
Yeah, executive ecoscaping.
Ecoscaping. And he's also a community activist. There's a little more. We're going to shift gears here now. On Dateline New Haven, Roddy Williams is watching, who's another contractor in town. He's building up his business and doing a really good job.
Rodney's an awesome guy.
Love to have Rodney on the show sometime talking about that. So you've combined, you're 31 years old, Jayuan. You grew up in New Haven. You worked at Yale, had a good job, saved up money, started a small business that has some social capital to it as well. You've also been involved in public activism. When did that start and why?
It started as that desire started when I was a child. It started with me having a close vicinity where there was a police shooting on Grand Avenue. My family was at my great grandmother's home, and come to find out, we learned that it was a police shooting. And
what does that mean? A cop shot someone?
Yes. So this would be the shooting of Malik Jones.
Oh, Malik Jones. Okay.
So
you were pretty young. We're talking 97 for that, right?
Yeah.
So that was 24 years ago.
Yep.
So you were 7.
Possibility, yeah.
Okay.
And understanding the impact on the community, and understanding what was happening in my family, because a lot of the men in my family they'd been in and out of jail.
Okay.
So it just was a notion of mine that I had to be involved on a community level to figure out why things like this happen. And in certain communities, this does not happen. And when the time was right, which was around 2010, 2011, where I was working at Yale, and the conversation started with one of my co-workers, Jess Corbett, and it was about how do someone get involved in a community when there's going to be a shift change. And I was invited to a door knocking event, and at that moment it piqued my interest, and I got involved.
Is that New Haven Rising?
No, it actually wasn't New Haven Rising. It was just something that was going on in regards to community conversation on development.
Mm-hmm. That was 2011?
Yes.
And then that was also the year you got involved in your ward committee. You lived in Fairhaven then, right?
No, actually I lived in Ward 22 on Ashman Street still.
Okay. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, you told me that.
Yes. So there's a shift change with the Board of Alders, and I got involved supporting Jeanette Morrison. I explained to her that I also want to become her ward chair, and that election took off, and I was able to win a seat there. And that election,
you were pretty young for that too. Let's see. So that was 9 years ago.
Yes.
So you were around 22. You were ward co-chair.
Yes.
With Cordelia Thorpe.
At that time, she was not the chair, but she was someone I was running against. But she was very a well-spoken person for the community, whose heart was in for the community, making sure that people in the community had a chance to thrive.
And Albert Knight says, I remember that fam. Thanks, Albert Knight. So what was it like being a ward chair at 22 years old?
The change that I wanted to bring it happened. People in my community felt as though there was a huge disconnect with city government, local government, and the actual residents. And it started off with just knocking on doors to understand that you begin to hear a pattern that there's no hope. There's some type of disconnection where the concerns of the people were not being met. And you will only know this if you truly stay involved. So it felt great to see a couple of things that were on the to-do list be accomplished. And one of those things that was very important that still is a reflection of how change starts is that on Munson Street there was a particular resident who concern was the street was too dark because the branches were covering the sodium lights at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a couple of issues going on.
And
And
you hear
her
about
being
that in Westville. I mean, in New Hallville, yeah.
yeah, and she was a single mom, and one night she was bringing in groceries in the wintertime. And upon traveling back to her car, a gentleman said hello, not to do any harm, but it was just being courteous. And it scared her because the fact that she was not able to see that person, and she felt as though it's not a safe environment for someone that if you can't see a person in your own point of view, something has to be done. So she pretty much let us know how her concerns were. I was able to take notes of that, send it to Jeanette. Jeanette was able to use her connections to actually get someone from Public Works to take a look and assess. What was very interesting and what
Did
I
they
found
cut the
out,
branches?
yeah, it was a process though. What I found out was that at that time the department heads there was a protocol in which they were not focused in my neighborhood at that time for those type of services. However, these people had a concern, and Jeanette was able to use her network to make sure that the person who did the route logistics was able to take a day or two off, and he was able to get those trees cut. Also, the partnership that Jeanette had with Alder Delphine, she was able to get grant money from the UI when they were actually transitioning from the sodium deposit lights to the actual lithium ion lights that are more brighter. We were able to get on that list. So we were able to accomplish two things at once because of relationships.
What, brighter lights? Better
Yeah,
lights?
better lights and actually getting the trees trimmed back so that they could actually have a better view.
So what did that tell you about activism?
It's one thing to be someone who complains and to actually voice your opinion, and then it's another thing to actually get involved and to also now roll the sleeves up and try to figure out what the hell is going on.
Uh-huh. So you decided to be someone to get involved.
Agree.
So what did you do after that? You spent 2 years as ward chair. What came next?
Well, during my co-chair, I would say experience, I actually had the opportunity to serve as the field organizer for Chris Murphy when he ran in 2012 as the senator. So that gave me an opportunity to take a leave of absence from my job at Yale and to actually see politics a little closer and understanding how to get out the vote.
Where were you the field organizing?
In New Haven. So we were actually headquartered on Willie Avenue.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Darryl Brackeen says, Hill House grad 2006, powerful class with successful millennials. Jayuan Carter.
Appreciate it.
One of
Thank
those
you.
examples, New Haven roots, building the community. Hashtag choose NHV. Thank you, Darryl Brackeen. He's the alder in Upper Westville. So the Murphy campaign gave you your taste of politics.
It did, actually. I was able to see the personalities that exist.
What'd you conclude about that? Because
Um,
Bob McCormick said he thought about running for alder. Did you think, I want to run for office like these guys?
anything goes now. I encourage anyone to run if you feel that you could do a good job. Sure, why not?
All right.
But what I can say is that the personalities, you got to work with people. Everybody is not going to be in a uniform line, but we got to have some type of unity, and we have to be clear on exactly what we're trying to accomplish. And it's not about if I like you or not. It's about actually how can we get the job done. 'Cause the pain is here.
Oh, wait, Murphy, that was a good campaign for Murphy. You guys got a great turnout in Ward 20, I remember.
Agree.
And it's about getting the job done. So what happened after that with your activism in 2012?
So the Murphy campaign actually also provided me an opportunity to work on an Obama campaign in Vegas. So
You went to
spent,
Vegas for
yeah,
that?
yeah.
Whoa.
So I spent 3 months working on Chris Murphy's campaign here in New Haven, which was up to the primary. And that led to an opportunity to actually go into Vegas for the next 3 months.
Did you
to work
spend
on the
time? Did
Obama
you do stuff
campaign.
in Vegas that only stays in Vegas, or were you really focused on the campaign?
I was focused on the campaign because my job was to actually win in my group, and I made sure that I was able to lead the most votes out of all of the other organizers.
So what'd you do up there?
I was responsible for a pool of leave of absences from Local 226 who had an initiative to make sure they had a huge voting turnout for Obama and some of their Senate leaders and congressional leaders. And the people who were assigned to lead them, it was like probably 15 of us who came from across the country. Our objective was to make sure to do just that, to lead a united front to make sure that that particular Senate district or different areas we were
So, like, what
assigned
would you
stood out.
do all day?
We map, we organized, we strategized, we planned, and try to figure out how can we encourage more people to vote, because Vegas, it's conservative and it has different pockets, but you have to make sure that your special interests are being met.
All right. So, and King Dar, and thanks everyone for listening. And King Darius Bay says, my brother's been working for a while. It's definitely if the community knows numbers. Hashtag New Haven has a story about Hill House. Bob McCormick said, were you an athlete at Hill House?
I played sports at Hill House, but it wasn't my priority.
What was your priority?
I being in a home, and the eldest of three, my job was to actually not be more of a burden on my mom, so I had to get a job.
So what did you do? Landscaping?
Landscaping part-time, and I also worked at the Yale bookstore on
Oh, yeah?
Broadway.
How'd you like that?
It was a good experience because it was one of my first legitimate jobs, where I was actually able to get a good check. It seemed like the work was hand in hand.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And what'd you do after high school?
After high school, I went to Gateway.
Mhm.
I served. Well, I actually got I had accomplished to get some credits there, and I started to work at Yale University.
All right. And then we did come up. Rodney Williams says, when you look at the projects in the pipeline, very few people at the table that know what is preventing black and brown contractors from growing. How do you think we can change that going forward? Asked Rodney Hillhouse, class of 84. Get more black, brown contractors at the table.
Well, what I can say is that we have to think creatively. This administration here has to truly think creatively on to understand how did we get here, and also how do we get out of the situation. Economic and inclusive growth is one of these topics now that a lot of people are discussing and talking about, but they don't understand that support systems are failing around us. In order for someone as a contractor to be consistent, they have to have a support system that makes sure that food, housing, clothing, childcare, transportation, healthcare, wellness, and even having access to a resource center is something that's not of an issue consistently, because that's where we fail and we're not able to meet the standards. Also, creative thinking, we have to understand that it's not about liking the person that's in executive office. What it's about right now is understanding that this is one city that's, and part of the city is in pain. So we have to understand that to go above, to meet the measurements as a contractor, means you're coming in with a disadvantage. And some of that disadvantage is access to money. So creatively, we have to understand that if a contractor secures money, let's just say it's grant money from the state, there needs to be a conversation with the state and the city, letting them know that this contractor has money from us in a loan, and they need to be immediately put on the contractors list. That way they can start repaying this money back, because efficiently we're not performing like we should, because a lot of small businesses are getting access to money, but they're not meeting the demands of repaying back that money. And also when we get our contracts through our city, that they're being paid on time. Because I noticed and I have learned that contractors, when we
know about that,
when we have a
it's
scope
black
of work,
hole when they tell you sign up for automatic check in the city, and then it doesn't come.
Right? Like, and this is the creative thinking where we now have to understand that as a city, you cannot have it just your way. You have to have it where the people could actually thrive. And some of that means that we got to start paying on time. And also we need to start talking to other vendors and other distributors to making sure that we are actually able to lean on them in the time of to do our work, our scope of work. So for instance, Lowe's is a box store that seems to be having some issues in the market. It's time, why can't the city just sit down with the CEO of Lowe's and say, listen, we have an ability where contractors are going to now start getting development opportunity. You could be our preferred provider of supplies. We have a payment system. Our payment system right now is not the greatest, right? Just a concept, but can you extend credit? Can you meet the needs so that our folks could not have a stop of work? Because as we're trying to make change, we need you to be a part of that. So we got to have some type of a cooperative approach to make sure that all fronts are actually making this whole thing thrive.
All right. And you're hearing that from Jayuan Carter, New Haven born and bred, activist, small business person with the climate on his mind. Here on Dateline New Haven, 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenbend.org. Let's wind it back a little bit. You got, Joanne, you had advice for the new mayor, Justin Elicker. You got on his bandwagon early. You did work for him. Why did you sign up with his campaign?
Well, it started with a collective of things. you talk about the age difference.
And by the way, Ron, his poll will not exist if this issue is not addressed now. He's seconding you.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's very important. So the age thing that you discussed, there's a now that needs to be met, and that now includes getting people from all different backgrounds to meet that now, because it can't just be a select few who serves just a certain few of a population. You need to be able to get the true strength of diversity.
Well, you chose Justin Elkler over Tony Hart. What was the reason?
So that for me, that came from being ignored on several times of trying to reach out. We had 6 years to reach out and to come to a table to actually discuss like what's on my mind. There's actually emails sent to actually get meetings set up. And it just got to the point where I just couldn't wait another term.
You didn't feel listened to.
Yeah.
Did Justin Elkler listen to you?
It started off with that. Yeah. So
What happened? You emailed him and he sat down with you?
Actually, I already had his number. Being a ward chair, you kind of don't take away those contacts.
Yeah, good move.
Right.
After for 8 years.
Yeah. So I just reached out to him a year prior to the actual kickoff of the election, and I wanted to get his mind to understand exactly what was his thoughts on the city itself. He was not my only choice, but he was the only choice who was willing to actually step up. And we actually had a conversation at a small coffee shop in East Rock, and it pretty much went like this: "Hey, Justin, the city is going through some issues, and I'm just wondering what are your thoughts on some of the areas that are being ignored, whether they're being ignored intentionally or they're just not being marketed as if they're actually happening, but it leaves a feeling for a lot of folks that something is not being done. So what are your thoughts on areas of inclusive economics?" He had his own definition of it, but I had to break it down to him, understanding that people in the community, we have a different understanding of that. And the question is, if you are going to be a candidate, what are you going to do to actually understand and come from a place where people can actually make decisions, and we just need someone with executive power to allow us to be creative enough to make the change we want. And at that point, he was able to give me a clear understanding that he was willing to actually take on that challenge. So for me, I jumped on that wagon really early, only because of the simple fact that the pain doesn't stop, and so our solution should never stop as well.
So you worked on the campaign. What'd you do?
So for me, I kept it on a volunteer basis. We had meetings before the actual kickoff of the election itself, and we discussed strategy. So we'll start with the strategy part. I explained to him that you're going to have like a campaign manager who is actually well diverse, who is able to get along with people in New Haven, because New Haven is
Frank, who was good at that. He was good
like you need someone who understands that there's people who have opportunity and there's people who are looking for opportunity, and the campaign manager has to reflect that. Also understand.
Did you feel he succeeded in that?
Yes, Gage did a very great job of doing just that point. But also, he was genuine, because he actually come up from a background that's in between privilege and not so privileged. So those meetings allowed me to have Justin's ear to discuss strategy. We were able to discuss actual talking points, and was able to actually introduce him to areas in the neighborhood that sometimes are quite overlooked.
And then, he did remarkably well for a white guy running against the most popular elected African-American official of the last quarter century in black and brown neighborhoods.
Yeah, he did.
Why did that happen? He's a totally white guy.
So what I think about that is that there's a couple of things that took place. There's a couple of variables. One of the variables is that there's still a distrust of local politics in New Haven. Like, the numbers show that, and that's the narrative that people don't really talk about. But a lot of people feel as though they're not involved because they're not part of the process. They feel as though when a politician come around, they only come around election time, and they make decisions that are not the greatest. But also, what people tend to not realize is that politics is not just one of those things where you come to one table and you hash out things. This is a repeated process. There's also different tables where you can actually discuss the changes that you actually need, like being a board of commissioner, being also an alder, being part of the Democratic Party itself. And these are different areas where you can actually compromise. These are areas where you can bring concessions to the table to actually get the desire that you're looking for. Instead of just expecting someone to deliver things at your own accord.
All right. We're talking to Jayuan Carter on Dateline New Haven, WNHH. Rodney Williams says we're being ignored right now. That's a fact. We can't afford to be ignored with dollars being made all around our city in our front and backyards. That's very true with all this building boom. And very few opportunities afforded to us right now. So I say once again, we can't wait until springtime to address this issue. Well, you addressed the issue, Jayuan, after the election. You got named to the transition team of Mayor Justin Elicker and Darrell Burkeen. Says Jayuan, the Elicker squad did an excellent job of leveling the field in New Hallville and Dixwell. Jayuan knows numbers.
Thank you.
That's a hashtag now. All right. So what happened to us is you got named to help guide policy for the next administration. What was that experience like? What did you do, and what did you take from it?
So the experience itself was something that I wanted. I actually seeked out to Justin and letting him know, like, hey, I want to be on the transition team right after the primary. And the reason being is because it has to go back to what is economics? Like, what is inclusive economics? What is that? Because it's going to be a trend that a lot of people are going to be talking. But we also have to understand that the marketplace itself is changing, and we have this window of opportunity right now to like really put efficiency first. We're lacking in that area. And what I mean by that is that when we had our actual economic boom in New Haven, because New Haven is a real thriving place, developers want to be here because we have an actual economic base. The hospital is growing. When a hospital grows, that means we have actual opportunity to develop. So the money is going to be here.
That $838 million neuroscience center going to start growing in Sherman and George.
Agree, but we also have to look at other projects that are actually taking place in these 10-year windows. And what's not being discussed in these windows is the fact that the impact of what's happening. Who supports the local business? More times out of 10, it's going to be the local residents. And if the local residents are not a part of that boom, the local businesses suffer. We're going to be waiting on other people to come and to refill those places when those places become empty.
So what committee were in the transition team? What committee are you on to deal with this issue?
So I served on the Economic Development, Transportation, Planning Committee, and I also served on Public Safety. Mm-hmm. So I was able to actually work with several folks on the Economic Transportation Committee, and we talked about the actual inclusiveness. Like, what does it look like when the actual tide rise?
Right.
But
so you're talking about how we involve the people left behind. How do we do that? You talked already about small contractors, local minority contractors when they get loans, make sure they get work so they can pay those loans, and make sure that the bills get paid by the government so they don't fall behind. And that, you get some leverage with other employers. What else are you thinking of specifically, Jayuan Carter, when you talk about inclusive economics that in this boom
set aside
in the rest of the city?
Set aside contracts.
Excuse me?
Set aside contracts.
Set aside. Yeah, no,
yes.
That's always been an idea that a certain percentage gets set aside, that we have a commission on equal opportunities that makes sure that happens.
Yeah, and it's not just through actual employment, it's also for contractors. I feel as though your city should be a place that is an actual foundation for you to actually grow. Mm-hmm. It's a place where you can actually improve your talents and skills. When you're seeing millions of dollars being circulated in the community, but what's actually captured in the community or the residents itself is less than 5%, that impact is not the desired amount to actually keep someone sustainable or to keep a neighborhood sustainable. And now that the local development is now attracted into neighborhoods of color, it's going to now bring in a different voting base. But we also have to understand that if we're not getting access to the dollars, we're not going to have the ability to sustain ourselves. We're not going to have the ability to actually be good citizens here in our own background, in our own backyard. So in order to address that, we need to look at what are we not taking care of that we already have permission or executive power to take care of. And this executive, it's me in an executive position to make sure that set-asides are actually part of the conversation. For years, money has been given out through department heads on a contractual basis to other companies, but the set-aside component is not something that's being on the forefront. And that impact,
I remember I thought
is showing it.
Very true for the major contractors. I thought we were making progress the last few years, that we did the Small Business Academy, get contractors going. I know that Rodney Williams got some good work there at the 201 Munson project. That was the result of public pressure that, we have to fight for it. I know that Giordano Company has been hiring a lot of African-American subs.
Yes.
Is it too little? Is it the right direction? Have we made a start? Does it take renewed focus? Because otherwise it falls by the wayside.
It's going to be renewed focus, being that a lot of people in the community don't even know what the set-asides are. I remember having a discussion with a department head a couple weeks back, understanding the breakdown of set-aside contracts. And this department head felt as though that he was doing a good job with the system itself, because there's an actual contract that this general contractor has an agreement with the local unions itself. And he felt as though there was no need to go above and beyond, because the local unions hire people that are actually in the community. Well, I said to this department head,
do they really, or do they hire white people from the suburbs?
It's a combination of both. But what I can say, and what I explained to this department head, I said, but who shops at the local restaurants? Is it the actual people in the union itself, or would it be more people in the community if they had actual access to the money? And he looked at it as he pretty much said it was a good point to bring up, because what we failed to realize is that the set aside contracts is where we have play on to make sure that contractors in the community has access to this to expand themselves, and then we can actually put ourselves on a different platform for state contracts and contracts that are outside of our county.
And Kamiri, I'm sorry I always get your first name wrong. One day I'm going to do better. Cooper says, proud of you, bro. Ronnie Williams, this young man's our future. We must support young black men in our community like Mr. Carter. Fight for them. You got a seat table. Tell me about the seat at the table. You're on the transition team. Are you looking to work for government, like for the Ellicott administration, or are you going to be one of those people we count on in the community to create wealth independently as a small business person, hire people, and then on the side work on boards and commissions? What's the vision for Jayuan?
So for right now, I definitely want to continue to grow the company. If the government knocks on the door, I would like to see what the actual conversation would be.
So you're open to all sorts of directions.
Yeah, because there's a lot of work that need to be done. I do know that there's work that I could do outside of government, and there's work that I could do within government. But creativity is a must. No, it's not either or for me. I'm young, so I'm able to actually change the directory. But I do know that regardless impact that I bring to the community is that I'm able to speak on conversations in which why certain things exist. Where's this gap that comes from? When a person looks at, or they believe in this narrative that New Haven isn't good enough, they have not truly invested into the opportunities that have been missed, the opportunities that are not encouraged. One thing I had the pleasure of actually learning on the transition team was actually working with William Ginsburg on talking about how we can actually have a good first 100 days for Justin. And we came up with this vision where how do we get this notion that Kim Harris provided, which is one city initiative? How do we make some type of task force where you have all the engines on this task force that focus on that one goal, which is how do we make New Haven better, which includes making sure that people who actually have boats that have holes in them, we could get those boats plugged, and then make sure that people who don't have boats can have a boat to make sure that they can survive when this tide rise. And we have a lot of the nonprofits who are actually operating in good accord, but we could also expand our services and understanding that there's more opportunity under their institutions that will actually cover the weaknesses of these for-profits to get people trained and hired, to get people on the same page where New Haven residents can actually be put on a platform to show them that we are sustainable, that we are good enough, that we have the capacity and talents and bandwidth to actually accomplish the goals that we're looking for, versus this narrative that we're looking for subsidies or we're looking for help. There's a lot of people who are really ready to be boots on the ground to get the job done.
Got a couple people asking you questions before I let you go. Mr. Cooper says, now that we have progress with the Q House, what about places like the Barbell? All communities should have a place to go to access resources. What we're talking about here is we used to have community centers across the country. The Barbell was a Hillcrofter Youth Services in Trowbridge Square Park. What about that? Do you see youth center needs? Do you see progress?
It goes back to support systems. A lot of families are on a stop and go traction only because the support systems are failing. If you don't have access to consistent, reliable childcare, how can you sustain a contract? How can you sustain a job? Right? There's always this type of challenge that is happening. And resource centers is one of the places where we can actually have a place where people can actually focus and get the education they need to solve not only their issues, but to partner with other folks on solving other people's issues. And we got to get back to that, because at one
So
point,
so child care could mess somebody up on a contract. They have to miss work because take care of kids, that kind of thing.
contracts and actual employment itself.
And the employees working for those contracts. What else besides child care would be support systems?
You got transportation, you have housing, you have access to food, you have clothing, like health and wellness. These things are all part of the support system that people don't look at as an important or vital step, but these are the things that can actually hold a person back or to make a person go forward at a faster rate.
And Rodney points out a very good point here. One contractor hiring did not grow our contractors. When there are hundreds of contractors coming to our cities, more contractors need to try and do what Jayuan is doing. Bob McCormick asks you, why aren't more young African Americans involved in the political process?
Well, a lot of us have goals that need to be met. That's a now. When you put student loans involved, where do you have the extra time? Sometimes people are able to squeeze out time. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of people aren't lazy. They just don't have the time to actually invest. As you can see, someone like myself, I squeeze out the time. I depend on my family to help raise my 3-year-old. His birthday just passed. So the fact of the matter is that in order to get people more involved, they have to feel like they're part of the process. So one thing about politics is that it can be a competitive sport. There's people who feel as though this is my arena. And if you're not going to get a line, then you're opposition, and that narrative has to change as well. And we're not looking for a uniform approach. It's about unity. Everybody has his own position, right? Everybody has their role. Everybody has their own subject that they want to become a subject matter expert. And one thing is that we all have something we can contribute. One thing for young people as well is that where's the mentors at? We need mentorship. There's a lot of people with plenty of experience. But it cannot just be relied upon just one particular group. It has to have this collective piece that has to always be a part of it. There has to be people who are willing to also give back their time, education, and the things of that nature, and so that we could actually focus on solutions.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're involved. You're one very involved person, New Haven, Jayuan Carter, both running a small business, executive Echoscaping, and working your way up through the political ranks as well, and in government and policy. Most recently with transition team of Mayor Justin Elliger. Thanks so much for coming here and enlightening us. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And I hope you'll be coming back. And I loved hearing from all the listeners. Thanks for weighing in on Facebook. Thanks to Yale New Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program. Thanks to the miracle man behind the controls, station manager Harry Drost. And he is a miracle man. And once again, thanks to Jayuan Carter. What a treat to have you on Dateline New Haven. We're going to take it out with Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.